Today I'd like to show you this mid-80s stereo radio cassette recorder from AKAI that did some things a little bit different. You could say that it added its own twist. Oh, and I'm neither calling this a boombox nor a ghetto blaster because it's not a big enough box to bring any boom or to blast any ghettos. But getting back to the things that this little and rather rare now stereo did slightly differently, and the first one is the location of the batteries. The battery compartment is inside the back of the speaker. Inside here there's room for 4 C cells. And of course there's another compartment in the other speaker. So yeah, this takes a total of 8 C cells, which add considerably to the weight. But in a reassuring way, it makes it feel quite substantial despite its diminutive size. Oh, and those wires that you see going into each speaker, those carry the power as well as the audio to and from that main unit. But with the batteries inserted, let's look at the next thing that caused me a bit of confusion, for a few seconds at least. The first time I used this, I pressed that far left button to open the cassette door because it had stop and eject written below it, and nothing happened. And then I spotted that the emblems didn't match up with the ones printed on the button. Yeah, the text refers to the button to its right. So if you look at play and record, those seem to be on the wrong side of the line for the button that they relate to. Now I can kind of see what they were going for with this, but I found it best just to ignore the text and go by the familiar logos that are shown on each button. But of course you have to remember this is an inverted mechanism, so play and fast forward point to the left. You get used to it, but yes, it's another quirk. Now, if you look at the top, you'll see we've got 4 sliders. Above those, it states it's a graphic equaliser. And whilst this looks like a 4-band equaliser, a closer inspection reveals that the leftmost one is for the volume. Yeah, you can see that this was a budget machine. Its feature set reflects that, but still, it's very well made. Nice little portable. And well, I don't know if it's been repaired at any point in the last 40 years. I can tell you that it's still working just fine now, whereas a lot of higher-end devices from back then are long since gone. One nice feature that you don't always find on budget models is the auxiliary input. That's a 3.5mm socket on the front that enables you to amplify external devices through this or use it as an input to record onto the cassette recorder. Now when it comes to the radio, it seems to have a really sensitive tuner that brings in as many stations as I could hope to receive in this location. Of course, to pick up the best signal and reduce any interference, I've needed to turn off all the LED lights in the room. Despite this being a small device with simple one-way speakers, it produces a really pleasant, smooth, rich sound quality that's way better than any of its modern-day equivalent devices that I've tried over the years that usually have a harsh, brash, metallic, thin sound to them. But those speakers don't just sound unusually good for their size, they're unusual in other ways too. Yes, they can be rotated. They lock into position every 45 degrees. And I don't know about you, but as soon as I pointed them down like this, they immediately reminded me of something. And I'm pretty sure that thing is the Nostromo from the 1979 Alien movie. Now, as is printed on the front of the cassette door, it is a free angle speaker system, so you could, if you desired, point the speaker straight down. But I'm not sure of the merits of such a decision. And pointing them straight upwards is possible, but it does seem to put a bit of a strain on the wires that poke out of the back. So I'd probably stick with either having the speakers straight or tilted diagonally upwards. However, if you wanted to, you could also point them backwards away from the front of the main unit. But of course, if you were to do this, the stereo left and right is going to be reversed. So perhaps better off just spinning the whole thing around rather than just the speakers. The AKAI PJ-11 seems to have been out between 1984 and 85. It appears in the AKAI catalogues for those years that are archived on the Hi-Fi Archive website. Whenever I show these, someone will always ask me why I show German brochures. The answer is because those are the only ones that you can find. If you've got English language equivalents, upload them. People would appreciate it. But in the meantime, I'll just use Google Translate on these. The 1984 AKAI US price list is available online now, and that shows that the PJ-11 cost $150, which is less than half the price of the other model that's shown, the PJ-33. So it was definitely the budget option, had less features. Perhaps it was aimed more at a younger market due to its funky design. Now, after a couple of years, the PJ-11 disappeared out of the AKAI catalogues, but they did briefly have one other model with rotating speakers, the PJ-30, which also featured two more fixed speakers in its centre section. I've never encountered any of these other models in the flesh, though. I suspect that the white case might have gone yellow on these by now, but back when they were new, they would have looked really striking, like something out of a 80s science fiction film. Now, you can also see in here that AKAI sold a set of powered speakers for connecting up with your Walkman, etc. These clearly share a lot with those on the PJ-11, and of course the speakers on that can be removed too. They can be spaced out away from the central section for a wider soundstage, and the rotating base on each comes in very handy for angling those speakers upwards. And it makes for a really nice little compact stereo system that I would have loved to have had as a young teenager. And with that auxiliary port on the front, I'd even be prepared for the future if I ever managed to save up for a CD Walkman to plug into it. Oh, and I've just got to mention how much I appreciate this font. Again, it's giving me that 80s sci-fi feeling mixed in with perhaps a bit of Wipeout on the PlayStation. Now, as well as that auxiliary on the front, there's a headphone socket and a switch for metal tapes. That's metal tape playback only, not record. The FM stereo mono switch also functions as a beat cut switch, and for anyone unaware, that's to stop undesirable interference when recording off the radio from frequencies other than FM. While we're on the subject of the radio, this has a 4-band tuner, so I thought I'd try the shortwave out, not expecting to pick up anything at all, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Erhöhungen der Brutto- oder Nettoeinkommen von 16% sind allerdings nicht mehr möglich.
I think some people I know were like, oh, it was nothing.
Perhaps it was just down to really favourable atmospherics on the day, but I've never picked up so many stations on shortwave so easily. Or then again, perhaps it's just a really good tuner. And while FM could be hissy on some stations, switching it to mono quickly rectified that.
97%, man. Let's try and get our phones out under it. New message, okay? Yeah. And then where it says 2, type in 70.
So yeah, it's a surprisingly good radio. And another surprise came when I put the speakers back on, because I'd forgotten that I'd rotated the bases 180 degrees and therefore the speakers were now angled outwards. Perhaps this is an intentional option, and I do quite like it. How many banana-shaped stereos do you get? But I'm sure this would also help with stereo separation. But next, let's move on to another peculiarity. And on the back in the middle, you can see we've got 2 metal connectors. These are to connect up with a power adapter. It's got the appropriate corresponding connectors and plastic rail cutouts, which enable it to be slid into position, piggybacking on the case. It even has a couple of feet on the bottom so that everything is held level. But with our power now connected, let's try recording to the tape. I'm plugging a Walkman into the auxiliary input, and I'm going to be playing some music from the YouTube audio library. Of course, the positioning of the sliders on the top has no bearing on the recording. It uses an automatic recording level as well, and there's no Dolby noise reduction, all things that highlight the budget positioning of this model. Now, I've got a blanked off tape here, so I'll just play it past its lead in, and then I'm going to put the recorder into record pause. Now, another feature that's been omitted from this device that you might expect on a higher end model would be a tape counter, something that's very useful when you're recording. And of course, there's no automatic track skip feature on this device either. However, on this occasion, once I've finished my recording, I just need to rewind the tape back to the beginning. Now, one thing that I did notice once the music had stopped was a loud background hum that I later traced back to that power adapter. The noise vanishes whenever this thing is being run from battery power. And I'm sure that's just down to aged components. Now, the audio from the recording is a little bit wobbly, but that's to be expected of a device of this age. And whilst it's not unlistenable, I'm sure it sounded a lot better back in 1984. Now, another thing I noticed was how much difference the speaker orientation made to the sound. Pointing them upwards added clarity and reduced a bit of boxiness that was present when they were horizontal. Now, as well as recording from the radio and the auxiliary input, there is a small mono microphone hidden away on the front, so let's give that a go. I'm often surprised how good these internal microphones are. Anyway, let's have a listen to this. I'm often surprised how good these internal microphones are. Of course, back in the day, we'd often record music off the television by holding our stereos near the speaker, but it's not something you tend to use nowadays. Anyway, let's have a listen to this. Yeah, there was plenty of motor noise coming through on that recording. Really wasn't uncommon for a small device like this back then, but I think it might have got worse due to age. Now, whilst you can unplug those speakers, there's really little point in doing so, because remember, the batteries are located in the speakers. So whilst it does look like a nice little compact unit with the speakers removed, something you could carry around, you've got no power. So your choice then would be to plug in the power adapter on the back, and then you need to stay near a power socket. So you might as well just plug your speakers back in so you don't lose them. Incidentally, the power adapter, while mine is 240 volts 50 hertz, I have seen some of these with a multi-voltage adapter included. And the ease of access to those connectors that are on the back means that someone could no doubt 3D print something that could take the place of a power adapter. That's if they ever found one of these for sale, which is unlikely. But the only job that remains for me now is to try and create a thumbnail for this video that hopefully makes this odd little device look intriguing enough for people to click on the video and therefore make it worthwhile me putting the video together to show it. Only time will tell. But I think this angle looks interesting enough, so that's the one I'm going to use. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.